He told me he was healing, healing from his past, healing from the pain, healing from the people who broke him before he met me. And I believed him. I believed every story he shared, every tear he wiped, every scar he showed me. I thought I was loving a wounded man who was trying to grow, trying to be better, trying to finally move on. But the truth didn't reveal itself through his words. It revealed itself through his patterns. The same things he said others did to him. He did to me. The same wounds he claimed he suffered. He recreated inside my heart. The same heartbreak he swore he never deserved. He handed to me without hesitation. One day, I finally realized he wasn't healing his past. He was repeating it again and again and again. And loving him didn't save him. It only destroyed me in the same way he had been destroyed before. When I first met him, he carried his past like a wound that never closed. He didn't hide it. He wore it in his voice, in his silence, in the way he looked away whenever something reminded him of what he had endured. He told me stories of heartbreak, betrayal, and people who walked away from him when he needed them the most. He spoke as if he had survived a war no one believed happened. And I, with all my softness, believed him. He made me feel like I was the first person who ever tried to understand him. The first person who saw through the armor he pretended not to have. The first person who cared enough to listen. He told me he was trying to heal, trying to be better, trying to become someone new. I don't want to repeat my past, he said one night, his voice barely above a whisper, and I believed every word he said. Because that's what loving someone wounded feels like. You want to be the safe place they never had. You want to be the calm after all their storms. You want to help them rebuild piece by piece until they finally start breathing again. But I didn't notice the cracks in his healing. Not at first. The way he apologized too quickly, the way he panicked at small things, the way he shut down without warning, the way he treated closeness like danger, the way he pulled me close and pushed me away all in the same breath. I thought it was trauma. I thought it was fear. I thought it was healing in progress. But I didn't realize something critical. He wasn't healing. He was repeating patterns he told me destroyed him, repeating behaviors he blamed others for, repeating the same story he claimed he escaped from, repeating the exact pain he said he never wanted to feel again. It began slowly. The first signs were subtle, almost invisible. He would talk about his ex like she was a villain. He claimed she lied, manipulated, controlled, betrayed. But whenever I asked what happened in detail, the story changed. Sometimes she left him out of nowhere. Sometimes he left because she hurt him. Sometimes they drifted apart. Sometimes she cheated. Sometimes she didn't. The facts shifted like sand beneath waves, but the emotion stayed the same. He was the victim, always the victim. Still, I held him gently, thinking maybe trauma made memories messy. I thought he needed patience. I thought he needed understanding. I thought love could reorganize the chaos inside him. I was wrong. The first time I noticed his pattern repeating was during an argument about something small. I told him a comment he made earlier hurt my feelings. His reaction wasn't sadness or understanding. It was fear twisted into anger. I can't do anything right, can I? You're making me the bad guy again. I froze. Again, I had never blamed him before. I wasn't attacking him. I was being honest. But wounded people with unhealed pasts don't hear honesty. They hear danger. His voice rose. His breathing changed. He pushed distance between us, as if my feelings were a threat. Then he turned cold, silent, detached, the same way he said his ex used to behave. In that moment, I realized he wasn't reacting to me. He was reacting to the past living inside him. but I told myself it was nothing. I told myself he needed time. I told myself he was scared, not cruel. I gave excuses for wounds I didn't create, but fear wrapped itself around our relationship. Not all at once, but gradually, he began pulling away for days without explanation. Then he would come back suddenly with apologies and promises. I didn't understand it then, but I do now. This was his cycle. His familiar pattern, his comfort zone. Distance. Fear. Return. Repeat. He blamed everyone in his past for hurting him. But he was hurting me the same way. One night, after disappearing for 2 days, he called me with a trembling voice. He said he felt overwhelmed. He said he felt misunderstood. He said he felt like he was becoming the person he feared most. But I don't want to hurt you, he whispered. And I believed him. Again. Because when someone cries to you, you believe their tears before you question their actions. But tears can lie, patterns don't. Slowly, he began to withdraw affection. Small acts first: canceled calls, unread messages, cold replies. Then bigger acts: doubts, jealousy, suspicion, accusations. You'll leave me like everyone else, he said once. I told him I wouldn't. I promised I wouldn't. I held him, reassured him, poured love into him. But instead of calming him, it fed a darker part of him, the part that believed love must be tested until it breaks. The more he felt loved, the more he feared losing it. And the more he feared losing it, the more he sabotaged it. He began checking up on me constantly, asking where I was, asking who I was with, asking why I didn't reply quickly. These weren't the actions of a healing man, they were the actions of someone repeating an old script. Don't be like the others, he said. But he was becoming exactly like the others he warned me about. One evening, he argued with me over something so small I can't even remember now. Maybe I was 5 minutes late replying. Maybe I sounded tired. Maybe he misinterpreted a word. Trauma makes people see danger in harmless things. And he turned into someone I didn't recognize. You're just like her, he said coldly. Her. The woman who supposedly broke him, the woman he never healed from, the woman he said destroyed his heart. I wasn't like her, but he made me wear her shadow. No matter what I did, he saw her in me. No matter how softly I loved, he reacted to wounds I didn't create. No matter how loyal I stayed, he feared abandonment more than he valued presence. And I slowly became the villain in his mind, not because of who I was, but because of who hurt him before me. He didn't want healing, he wanted repetition, because repetition feels familiar, and familiarity feels safe to broken hearts. The moment I truly understood this was the night he said something that shook me to my core. We were talking about the future, about trust, about rebuilding, and I told him gently, I'm not her. He stared at me with empty eyes and replied, no matter what you say, you will be. That was the night I realized he wasn't trying to heal his past. He was recreating it, recreating the pain, recreating the drama, recreating the abandonment, recreating the chaos. Because that chaos was the only thing he knew as love. And I, loving him with every honest part of me, didn't realize I was stepping into a story that wasn't mine. I wasn't his partner. I was his repetition. And loving someone who repeats their past is like trying to rescue someone who keeps jumping into the same fire expecting you to catch the flames. But flames don't care about love. And soon, I realized neither did he. The deeper I loved him, the more clearly I began to see the patterns hidden beneath his apologies. Patterns he disguised as fear. Patterns he blamed on his past. Patterns he carried from relationship to relationship, repeating them like a script he didn't know how to rewrite. He didn't heal, he recycled. He recycled the distrust. He recycled the silence. He recycled the emotional distance. He recycled the self-pity. He recycled the chaos. And I didn't understand then that people who never heal their wounds end up creating new wounds inside the people who love them. At first, the changes were subtle. If I didn't respond to a message right away, he'd get quiet and withdraw. If I shared something happy with him, he'd dismiss it or ignore it. When I needed comfort, he'd say I was too emotional. When I confronted his behavior, he'd say I was starting problems. Every trigger he had became my fault. Every insecurity he carried became my responsibility. Every pain he felt became my job to fix. Loving him felt like walking through a minefield where I didn't plant a single explosive, yet I was blamed every time something blew up. He once told me his ex made him feel unseen, yet he ignored me for days. He once told me she didn't communicate, yet he sat down mid-conversation. He once told me she made him feel small, yet he belittled my feelings when they didn't match his comfort. I didn't realize it at the time, but every complaint he had about her was simply a preview of what he would eventually do to me. Trauma doesn't go away because someone loves you. It goes away because someone heals. And he wasn't healing. He was repeating the past just with a new person, a new face, a new heart to break. One night, he vanished for a full day without explanation. My messages were delivered but unread. Call after call went ignored. Worrying devoured me. Fear gripped my chest. I had no idea whether he was safe, hurt, angry, or avoiding me. When he finally messaged the next morning, it was a single line. I needed space. No apology. No explanation. No reassurance. Just a cold sentence designed to shut me up. I didn't want to be controlling. I didn't want to be dramatic. So I swallowed my worrying and said, "Okay, I just wanted to know you were safe." But he replied, "You made it about you again." That sentence cracked something inside me. How could my concern be selfish? How could missing him be manipulation? How could caring be wrong? But people with unhealed trauma mistake love for pressure. They mistake concern for attack. They mistake closeness for threat. He wasn't fighting me. He was fighting his memories and using me as the battlefield. Slowly, I stopped sharing my feelings. I stopped telling him when I was hurt. I stopped asking questions. I stopped expecting consistency. I stopped asking for the things he promised freely in the beginning. I was shrinking myself into someone who wouldn't trigger him. But the smaller I became, the bigger his control grew. The more silent I stayed, the louder his fears became. The more gentle I tried to be, the more aggressively he repeated his patterns. He didn't smile. He didn't look proud. He looked scared. "I don't want to be hurt again," he said. I reached out to take his hand, but he pulled away, looking at me as if I had said something terrible. That's what she said too. He whispered. She again. That shadow from his past, a ghost living between us. I wanted to scream that I wasn't her. I wanted to shake him and say, "See me, not your past." But he couldn't see me. He only saw the shape of his old wounds in everything I did. That night, after he fell asleep, I sat awake thinking. I thought about the woman he spoke about so painfully, the one he claimed destroyed him. And suddenly, something horrifying crossed my mind. What if she wasn't the villain? What if she was me, years earlier? What if she loved him as deeply as I did, and he repeated the same cycle with her too? People who don't heal don't become better, they become repeaters. And I was living the same story she lived. The same pattern, the same emotional roller coaster, the same silent suffering. But the moment everything became undeniable was a day I will never forget. But then, out of nowhere, he asked, "If I disappear again, will you wait?" My heart sank. Disappear again. I repeated, "Why would you disappear?" He laughed softly, but there was no joy in it. "Because that's who I am." My chest tightened. I whispered, "But you said you were trying to change." And then he said something that broke me in a way I had never been broken before. Trying doesn't mean succeeding. That was when everything inside me fell silent. I realized, in that one sentence, that he didn't see a future. Where he was healed, he saw a future where I tolerated his damage, where I accepted his patterns, where I learned to survive his chaos. He wasn't building a future with me. He was asking if I would fit into the past he refused to outgrow. The next days were worse. He began criticizing me for small things, how I talked, how I reacted, how I needed reassurance, how I tried to understand him. He accused me of being clingy when I reached out. He accused me of being cold when I didn't single quotes t. He accused me of being dramatic when I cried. He accused me of being distant when I stayed quiet. No matter what I did, I was a reflection of the woman who hurt him. No matter what I said, I was part of the story he kept reliving. And then came the moment that shattered me completely. We were arguing again over something tiny. My tone wasn't harsh. My words weren't cruel. I simply said, "I feel ignored." His face changed instantly. "You always do this," he snapped. "You act like I'm the problem." I took a breath and whispered, "I didn't say that." But he wasn't listening. He wasn't even in the present. He was in the past, fighting someone who wasn't me. Then he said it. He said the words that made everything fall apart. "You're repeating everything she did." I knew this would happen. My heart froze. My chest tightened painfully. I wasn't repeating anything. I was living through the repetition he created. That night, alone in my room, I realized something devastating. I wasn't his partner. I wasn't his healing. I wasn't his safe place. I was his cycle. His repetition, his unfinished story, his unhealed wound. And nothing hurts more than loving someone who uses your heart to reenact the pain they refuse to let go of. Healing doesn't always happen with gentle conversations or long hugs or promises whispered late at night. Sometimes healing begins in the exact moment you finally see the truth for what it is, not what you wanted it to be. And the truth about him hit me slowly, painfully. And then all at once, he wasn't broken in the way I imagined. He was broken in the way that breaks other people. Loving him felt like trying to rescue someone from a burning house while he kept running back inside. Every time I pulled him out, thinking he was finally safe, he would walk straight into the fire again, dragging me a little closer to the flames each time. The night everything finally snapped was strangely quiet. I remember sitting beside my window, staring at the city lights, wondering how I became the version of myself who begged for basic kindness, how I became someone who apologized for his silence, how I learned to walk on emotional eggshells around someone I trusted, how I became smaller, softer, weaker, not because he asked me to, but because I believed shrinking myself was the price of staying. The truth surfaced gently at first. I was losing myself trying to hold on to someone who wasn't even trying to stay. Over time, the signs became impossible to ignore. He no longer laughed with me the way he used to. He no longer looked at me with softness. His texts grew shorter. His tone became colder. The warmth that once lived in his voice vanished. Every conversation turned into misunderstanding. Every moment turned into tension. Every day turned into emotional survival. But the hardest part wasn't the change. It was realizing he didn't see the change at all. He thought he was the same. He thought I was the one acting differently. He thought I was the one triggering him. He thought I was the one pushing him away. In his mind, he wasn't repeating a cycle. He was defending himself from a danger that didn't exist. People with unhealed trauma sometimes confuse love with fear and fear with love. They chase the pain they're familiar with. They sabotage the peace they aren't used to. They destroy what's stable because their heart only recognizes what hurts. And I became the newest casualty of his emotional history. One evening, after a cold silence between us, he called unexpectedly. His voice trembled. Not with sadness, with anger. "I feel like you don't care anymore," he said. My breath caught in my throat. I cared more than anyone ever had, but I had nothing left to give. "I care," I whispered, "but I'm exhausted." He scoffed. "Then leave." Everyone else did, and there it was, the core of his wounds. Not that people hurt him, but that he refused to see his part in the pain. In that moment, something inside me finally broke. Not the fragile part that loved him, but the strong part that protected me. I said quietly, "I don't want to leave, but I can't stay like this." He went silent, in the way that felt like a punishment, silent in the way that made me feel guilty for telling the truth, silent in the way that showed he was already slipping away emotionally, ready to repeat the pattern with someone else. But this time, I didn't chase the silence. I didn't apologize. I didn't beg for reassurance. I didn't ask him to stay, because I finally realized that nothing I said or did could heal a wound he refused to acknowledge. He whispered, "You'll regret this." My heart exhaled, not in fear, but in acceptance. "No," I said softly. "I regret staying this long." His breath caught. The first crack in his confidence appeared. The first flicker of truth reached him. "You're just like her," he said bitterly. I shook my head, even though he couldn't see it. "No, I'm the one who finally stopped letting you repeat what she started." And then the final silence, the kind that doesn't hurt. The kind that feels like freedom. After the call ended, I expected to cry, to collapse, to fall apart. But instead, an unexpected sense of peace washed over me. Not happiness, not relief, just peace. The quiet after a long storm finally breaks. The next morning, he didn't message. I didn't either. He didn't check on me. I didn't check on him. But the more hours that passed, the more something shifted inside me. Something that had been buried beneath months of fear, confusion, and emotional exhaustion. Days later, he reached out with a simple message, "Are you really done?" I stared at it for a long moment. My hands didn't shake. My chest didn't tighten. My eyes didn't burn. I typed slowly, "I'm done with the version of you that hurts me. If you ever choose to heal, you'll become someone new." But that's not who I was with. He replied almost instantly, "You're giving up too easily." I exhaled a soft, sad breath. "No," I wrote. I stayed far longer than anyone should when love keeps repeating the same pain. And then, with steady fingers, I ended it the same way he ended every good thing in his life, abruptly. Without ceremony, without looking back, I blocked him. Not out of revenge, not out of anger, not out of coldness, but out of closure. Real closure, the kind that keeps you from reopening the same wound again and again. Weeks passed. Healing wasn't linear. Some days hurt more than others. Some nights felt heavy. Some mornings felt empty. But slowly, the space he left began filling with pieces of myself I had forgotten. I left freely. Again, I slept through the night. I didn't check my phone obsessively. I didn't fear silence. I didn't blame myself for his wounds. I didn't feel responsible for his healing. I became someone he wouldn't recognize anymore. And that's when the final truth settled deep in my heart. He wasn't healing his past, he was repeating it, and leaving him was the only way to stop him from repeating it inside me.